Look at Roger Bannister. Roger Bannister was the first man to break the 4-minute mile as a runner. Now, before he did it, nobody believed that you could do it. In fact, you had scientists in universities who would actually show you the anatomical structure of why a human being cannot break the 4-minute mile. If they did, they would die. It's like as if you hit 3:59 and if you just were about to cross the line, you just fall over and die. It was scientifically impossible, they said. Roger Bannister just didn't believe it. He wanted to break the 4-minute mile. And he put it out there. I think it was a movie done about it. And because he was putting it out there, he was saying, I'm going to break the 4-minute mile. Some runners in Australia and some runners in America, I think he was from English, from the UK. Everyone said, no, 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 I'm going to break the 4-minute mile. No, 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 I'm going to be the first to break the 4-minute mile. They didn't really believe it. Roger Bannister did. Here's the fascinating thing. Roger Bannister finally broke the 4-minute mile. Took a while, but he broke the 4-minute mile. And guess what? Within the next week, about 7 other people did. What were they waiting for? Someone else to prove that it can be done. They had the strength, the training, the bodies, the youth, the energy. They couldn't break that 4-minute mile because the mindset said, well, nobody has ever done it. So maybe it can't be done. The scientists, our academics, our teachers, our philosophers, everyone is saying that this just can't be done. It's impossible. The moment someone else did it, everyone else was doing it. They had the capacity the whole time. Dynamic assertives are the people who break ground so that other people can believe things can be done. They are the trendsetters. Dynamic assertives are very spontaneous people. They like to do what comes to mind. Dynamic assertives do not fit into the box. So this is the most difficult discussion to have with dynamic assertives. Because it's like putting them in the box, and they don't like to be in the box. You put them in the box, they'll break out of the box. And so, but still these characteristics, again, like I said, I'm not trying to take away anyone's uniqueness. The way that you will manifest your energy will be your own unique way within your own unique circumstances. Nelson Mandela had a different way of doing things than Martin Luther King did. They're both dynamic assertives, different circumstances, and they still manifested their energy as being challenging to authority, as being very stubborn people. Dynamic assertives are extremely stubborn. Nelson Mandela spent at least 3 decades in prison saying, you're wrong, I'm right. And I will sit here until you realize it. Any other life energy, like, guys, let me out. I give up. These are very stubborn people, very difficult to convince of anything. In fact, I always give people advice. If you have a dynamic assertive in your life, don't give them advice unless they ask for it. Because you can talk to them till you're blue in the face. If they don't give themselves the advice, these are very inner-directed people. Dynamic assertives are people who take their own counsel. When they are convinced of something, they will do it. And you can come along, I told you that 10 years ago. I know, but I want to do it now. You can tell them something, and if they are not ready to do it, then they won't do it. They are hard people to convince. And they are very convincing people, so you have to be careful around them sometimes. They can convince you of things. They love to share ideas. They love to share their ideas about things. They love to really go deeply into things, and they like to see the bigger picture in life. Now, dynamic assertives only make up 1% of the population, so there's not that many of them out there. So they tend to be the most misunderstood of the 7 life energies, because nobody really thinks in the way that they do. And their thinking is always changing. They're always thinking in a broader, bigger vision. And they're the ones who are constantly frustrated that other people don't see what they see. Why can't you see? It's just so obvious. It's a conspiracy. They're the conspiracy theorists. Because they see behind the veil. They see what else is going on. They take the time to look deeper into these different things, while other people don't really. And so they tend to be labeled as strange and weird because they always have these very different ideas, and they're all, they're very into these ideas. And they like to share these ideas. Dynamic assertives love to share their ideas with people who are willing to listen. And dynamic assertives are the type of people who you will have a conversation with and walk away, and you could practically write an article about what they've shared, because they have this stream of consciousness. They'll take an idea and just take you all over the place with it. and bring together all kinds of different things, and then, you know, you're walking away like, wow, I never really thought about it that way. So, and one of the important things that I always let dynamic assertives know is that because you're only 1% of the population, if you're not doing what you're meant to be doing, that means 99% of the population is not benefiting. You're taking away, by suppressing your life energy, you're taking away the benefit that other life energies are reliant upon dynamic assertives to do. I mean, what if Gandhi just woke up one day and said, you know what, I don't really want to do this anymore. Let someone else liberate India. 99% of the population couldn't do what he did. And of course, there are things that the other life energies do that dynamic assertives no way in hell could do. Dynamic assertive could not work at the same job for the 30 years, doing the same thing 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. They'd go nuts. And adaptive supportive can. Dynamic assertive? No. Routine is not for them. Simplicity is not really for them in the sense of predictability. These are unpredictable people who have a difficult time working for other people. Dynamic assertives do best working for themselves, or working with people who give them the sense of space and freedom to be able to approach things in their unique way. Because unfortunately, dynamic assertives are very systems-oriented people. In other words, they're very organized. They can walk into an environment and they'll immediately see what's wrong in the environment. And more importantly, how to improve it. So imagine you're dynamic assertive. You're walking into a job environment and you're there and it's exciting for the first week. You know, you got your new job, and suddenly you're figuring everything out. You figured out how this works, and you figured out that, and then by the end of about 1 or 2 weeks, you're kind of seeing how things can improve. So you go, like, I got this idea, you know, what if we did this way? And other people are like, you just got here. Shut up. And, you know, but things could run a lot smoother. And so these people end up with a lot of difficulty in work environments because they have this innate sense of organization. They're systems people. They can go in, organize something, create a new system, and it's best that they leave it to other people to implement that system. Because otherwise there's this torturous going on every day, but things could be a little bit better. This could run a little bit smoother. Why are you guys doing this the hard way? And so it makes it very difficult for dynamic assertive if they do not have the freedom within an environment to allow it to evolve in the way that they see it evolve, because they're very idealistic. And hence they can tend to be very perfectionistic as well. More than any other energy type of the 7 life energies, dynamic assertives have a difficult time with classical relationships. These people have a difficult time in any kind of situation that constrains them. Number one, dynamic assertives are extremely independent people. And as a result, that makes it difficult to be with them because they don't need you. Dynamic assertives take care of themselves. Dynamic assertives are the type of people who spend their lifetime hearing things like, why didn't you call me? Dynamic assertives don't burden other people with what they're going through. They like to be very independent. So if you're in a relationship with a person who doesn't need you, and you're perhaps a needy person or a person who needs to be needed, that can be a very difficult situation to be in. The other problem with dynamic assertives is that they prefer things to be done on their terms. The problem is their terms can change overnight. And again the next night. Dynamic assertives need a lot of space to be themselves because they have visions of what they want to do in life. And I always tell dynamic assertives, you have to tend to your own visions. No one is going to see what you see. There's only 1% of the people is dynamic assertive. And so they have a special quality and a special ability about them to be able to see things in a different way. And when they try to explain what they're seeing to other people, people just don't quite get it. And the dynamic assertive can find themselves constantly in a sense of difficulty because they're trying to explain to someone because they're trying to get them on board with their vision. You do best not to do that. It's your vision. You can ask people for help, but nobody's going to see it in the way that you see it. So in a relationship setting, that can be very frustrating because these type of people need a lot of space. And the creative assertives also need a lot of space to work on their creativity, but it's a little bit different. Like the creative assertive needs their own space in the other room. Dynamic assertives need you out of the building. It's like, go away, I don't want you nearby. So, and people can often take this as a sense of unfriendliness, but dynamic assertives are extremely introspective people. If something goes on and they're trying to understand something, they need to be alone to reflect on it. And people... Say that again?
How does it feel?
How does it feel?
To be one.
Great. Absolutely. I'm a dynamic assertive.
I know.
Definitely. 100%. So when you have when a dynamic assertive has something that they're trying to understand or something that they're grappling with, they need to be alone. And people can't understand it, they'll take it personally. What did I do? What do you mean? What do you mean you don't want to be around me? Or you don't want to see me just yet? People can take that personally. They don't understand. It's not personal. It's that the dynamic assertive needs a lot of space to explore the process of his or her life. The number one relationship that dynamic assertives have is with life. Life is unfolding. They are dynamic people. They are constantly changing. So anything that puts them into a predictable, constraining environment, they will naturally want to break out of that environment. Dynamic assertives are very curious people. They like to explore their own truth. It's not that they don't believe you. It's not that they're distrusting, but they want to validate their own truth by having their own experience of it. So often I say if there's a cliff and everyone in the village is saying, you're not allowed to look over the cliff, the dynamic assertive will say, why not? Well, because our leaders said not to. And then the dynamic assertive, once everyone's back is turned, or perhaps not, will walk over and look over the cliff. Not that they're distrusting people. They want their own truth. And these are the ultimate truth seekers. Dynamic assertives seek out the truth about things. And when they find the truth about things, they share them with other people. And that's not always a positive in the eyes of other people who may be challenged by those truths, who may feel challenged by those truths. So usually anytime there's any kind of revolution that goes on, dynamic assertives are the first ones to get wiped out of the way. Nelson Mandela was put in prison. Gandhi and Martin Luther King, they didn't survive. Even Socrates, going way back. These people are very challenging. And because they have this charisma and they have this dynamism about them, it's a threat for dynamic aggressives who want to stay in power if they're doing so in a corrupt way. So dynamic assertives tend to be the first ones to kind of get wiped out, pushed out of the way when when power wants to hold on to power. Dynamic supportives, and mind you, these are all on the dynamic side of things. And dynamic is a way of thinking. Dynamic is a way of seeing the world as changing. Through the eyes of dynamic people, the world is constantly changing. And they can see this change, and they can see visions of change. And they're very conceptually creative. They like to look at life and see that things are changing. And they all have in common this sense of charisma. People are drawn to them. They can be very charming. They can be very engaging. The dynamic aggressive is the extreme example of dynamism. They change everything, and they're bent on change for their entire life. So they're the extreme example of what dynamic energies do in life. The dynamic assertive is sort of in the middle. They appreciate change, but they can back away from it. The difference between dynamic aggressive and dynamic assertive is that the dynamic aggressive and the dynamic assertive both can have the same vision. They can see the same future. They can see well into the future. The dynamic assertive will stop and think, should we really do this? What are the consequences? How is this going to affect people? Is this an ethical and moral thing to do? Dynamic aggressive? No, it's got to get done. It's going to get done, and I'm going to be powerful. Dynamic assertives will think things through. They will reflect on the big visions of life to see, is it a good thing? Instead of just bulldozing through and tearing up the environment, displacing people, causing things to go extinct. They'll think about those things and they'll challenge those things. The dynamic supportive is the softest of the dynamic energies. They're still charismatic. People are still drawn to them, but they're extremely friendly people. If you ever met someone in life and they just immediately felt like a friend, those are dynamic supporters. They have a real soul, because they're charismatic, it's just, they're delightful to be around. They don't have the drive to want to convince people of things, and they don't want to control things for certain, but their supportive energy makes them great counselors, healers, therapists, clergy, They love to be there for other people, and they love to communicate with people. They're amazing mediators because they have a special quality about them that they can feel. They're natural empaths, and not an idea. Some people, yeah, I'm empath. No, these people are empathic by nature. And what does that mean? It means they can feel your emotions as if it was their own. Dynamic supportive can stand next to you, and if you're happy, they'll feel that happiness as if it was their own. If you're sad, and you don't even tell them that you're sad, they'll feel it. They're like emotional sponges. So they can feel what you're feeling. But because they're very dynamic, they're good at talking to people. So they'll feel your feelings and they'll say, you know, I know what that feels like, and they'll mean that. But their dynamic mind will come up with ideas. Maybe why don't you try this? Or why don't you try? And they're very patient. They can listen to you for hours on end. And not just listen as in, oh yeah, I hear you. I can, you know, I'm not talking and you're talking, so I'm listening. No. They hear what you're saying. They take it in.